Welcome to Athletes, Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources. But this show is all about athletes transition out of sport. It's such a major issue today between mental health, financial literacy. So we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their journey and ultimately their transition out of sport into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. But today's a little bit unique, though, because we still have a current NFL player, Zaire Franklin. How you doing, Zaire?
I'm good. I'm good. Appreciate you having me on today.
It's a pleasure. So it's interesting because as we go through this podcast and talk about it, uh, I'm kind of excited because Zaire exemplifies just that transition out of sport. Like he's already working on it. Like he's still playing at a high level, but he's doing things in the world of entrepreneurship, which we'll talk about a little bit later. He played football at Syracuse, and now he's plays for the Indianapolis Colts. He's been there. You said it was 8 years now.
Yes, sir. Just finished up 7, going on to 8. Goes by fast, man.
Yeah, I know it, but that's good because didn't they say like most people play what like an average of 2 years or something like that? Is that what the average is?
2.3. Yeah, so something.
2.3. So you're an All-American NFL guy.
I've never looked at it like that, but yeah, those statistics are so skewed. I hate when they throw those.
Yeah.
I guess it's the reality, though.
I'm sure it is. So anyway, let's talk about playing sports growing up and how that shaped you leading up into college.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up around sport, so I'm the only child on my mom's side, but I was raised with my cousins. I'm the youngest of that group, so I was always the little one just running around trying to be with everybody. And I grew up playing, football, baseball, and just pretty much anything I could do to get my hands on.
Now, did you dream about being a professional athlete? Was it football or was it maybe another sport?
Uh, I did dream about being a professional football player, but honestly, it just seemed so far fetched. Like it just seemed so like unrealistic of a dream. I honestly would just say I just focused on just being, the best that I could be, just trying to be the best at my whatever role or whatever level I was at. And I just always knew that would eventually maybe translate to that, and maybe I'll have an opportunity. Honestly, yeah, the NFL was just so far of a dream in the head. I just kind of just wanted to be good.
That's great. I joke about it all the time. I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. Unfortunately, talent wasn't there, so now I do a podcast. We're talking about transition out of sport and education. So when you were at Syracuse, was there any type of, and I don't mean just like the one day, but was there any type of workshops or classes that they had kind of preparing athletes once they were done with sport?
Yeah, so my experience at Syracuse was, I wouldn't say a bit unique, but being a student athlete was something that was extremely important to me. So I took my education at Syracuse very seriously. The reason I chose it originally was because they had a great sport management program named after David Falk, who's Michael Jordan's agent. Um, and, just being in that program and the people who were involved in that, they really helped me try to learn, what I wanted to do. Because I always saw myself being involved in the business side of sport, whether I made it to the NFL or not. Now, when I started at sport management my freshman year, I quickly realized that, my classmates that I was in the classmates I was dealing with every day, they weren't going through the same experiences that I was having. They weren't, lucky enough to have the connections that I had to the legitimate football world. I'm in there. I remember being in class one day and we're writing an article about ESPN, and that weekend I was playing on ESPN. So I was just kind of like, I kind of got a different experience than these people. So from there I pivoted and I realized I was like, well, look, sport management is not going to necessarily help me because I'm already an athlete. So I don't need the sport title on it. If I want to learn business, I just need to go to business. So I switched my major. I majored in finance and marketing, double major, and I ended up having to graduate. I ended up graduating a semester early with my finance degree so I could go train for the draft. But I'm only like 2 classes away from a marketing degree. It's actually something I always think about. I'm like, man, I should just go finish that degree. I only got like 1 or 2 classes left. But yeah, so my education was something I took extremely serious. I was going to job fairs and all the different stuff. I was very involved with class when I was at school.
That's great. And maybe I'm sure Syracuse will take you back for those 2 classes, or you could always say, I'm gonna, if you don't want to take me back, I'm gonna go to IU and I'll get my business degree from IU.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about, we're all talking about networking, connecting, and this is something that's real big. And talk about the importance of doing while you're still playing.
Well, yes. very early on when you get to the NFL, people talk to you, and obviously you experience. Everybody wants to be involved in you. Everybody wants to be in the business of the NFL. The fastest way to do that is to connect through a player. So, and that goes on both sides. You got the jewelers and the designers, and they all want to get you to spend money. But on the flip side of that, there's business people and, companies that want to be involved with, self motivated high achievers who are used to working in a team setting. So just knowing that, being able to leverage the shield of the NFL and your position as a current NFL player, to get you in rooms and have conversations with people who are professionals in their own right, is extremely important. And I think the longer you are in the league, because it's hard to do that as a young guy, but the longer you are in the league, I think you start to understand the importance and just the privilege that you have being a part of the NFL and how to better utilize that to help you set up for life after ball.
Yeah, no, it's important, like you said, especially with that whole like NFL badge, like you talked about. What about going back to even when you were at Syracuse, or even before that? I mean, like you mean at like a young level, like I say, a high school athlete.
You talking about just in terms of networking?
Yeah, just in terms of networking, kind of starting to build those
Well, I would
relationships.
say, going to business school, they teach you all about networking, like had an entire class about networking. That's just kind of how
Okay.
they do, one of those like, 100 levels, of course. Um, what I would just say is, and, it was something that was important to me. One of the reasons I chose the Syracuse was just as a young athlete, you know expand your community. Networking is obviously a professional term, but at the end of the day, it's just your ability to connect with somebody and find something that you both understand, whether that's a friend that you're mutual with, an interest you're mutual with, or a company that you're both familiar with, and being able to just, I don't know, connect based off of that and maybe be able to further along that relationship. I think for young athletes, sometimes we get so caught up in, oh, I'm a football player, I'm gonna just hang with the football players. I might hang with basketball players, but that's really about it. When I went to Syracuse, I was extremely interested in being a part of all the communities. And I think a lot of that had to do with the high school that I did go to. Because at my high school, um, South College High School, it's an all boys preparatory school, but there was no, cliques or legions. The best player on the band got the same respect as the number one lacrosse player in the country who went to our school. So it was just very free flowing like that, and I kind of took that mentality to Syracuse, and it was just, I wasn't just obviously my teammates; those are my brothers. We go to war every weekend, and those are the guys I spend the most time with. However, I never shied away from an opportunity to learn more about the different clubs or activities that was going on campus. To try to make sure I was getting the full experience of going to school.
Yeah, and that's so important. I mean, what Zaire's saying here too, because I think that even when you're back in high school, think about all your teammates, their parents. You never know where people are going to be, and then even in college, like you said, going across different groups and just being involved. I mean, it's so important because you just never know where people are going to be, and we always talk about having kind of that pay it forward mentality. It's all about helping people and kind of going into that conversation, not what's in it, for you, but how can you help another person? And I think that's so important.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I got a business partner that I work with. We both are investing into a financial literacy app together. And, he's a West Point grad, extremely high level special forces guy. And he was just, when I first met him, he was just so willing and openly to make connections, to pay, like you said, pay it forward. And he told me, he was just like, hey, listen, I just have a mentality and a personality where I'll connect you with somebody that I know will help you. And I don't want anything to do with it. It's just knowing that, I'm helping making these connections to help moving you forward towards your dreams. Eventually, hopefully you'll be able to pay it back or however that works. And it just in a genuine way where you're not really looking for things, but you're just helping make connections and helping people with their goals and their dreams. The universe always tends to, work its way back to you in that sense. So I definitely think that's extremely important.
Yeah, 100%. What and I'd like just like you said too, just doing even or while you're playing, because I've talked to agents before and they say the biggest failure of some of these players is just they don't do it while they're playing, and then they get done and they're kind of expecting the whole world, and unfortunately because they haven't built up this relationship. So I think it is important for everybody to continue to do that, and even at that young age like we're talking about.
Hmm.
So let's talk. Let's talk a little bit about alumni engagement. So obviously, at Alumni Direct, that's important to us as we're trying to build these alumni communities, including like an athlete community center, and then specific to the schools. But when you were at Syracuse, was there a movement to bring back, alumni athletes, and not just for the homecoming game, but more for just to mentor and things like that?
I would say, all college programs benefit from having alumni a part of it. It's a little bit of a tricky side because as much as you want the support and the overwhelming, presence of the greats and the guys that played there, you also got to understand that their voices and their opinions actually move a lot further as well. So sometimes it gets a little tricky, when you first signed as a coach and you got alumni support and you're playing well, but it takes a turn, and then a couple of those alumni don't like you. Now they're loudly advocating against you, so that's always a little bit of a tricky thing. We had a coaching change when I was at Syracuse, so that might have helped. That might have deterred a little bit of it, but I wouldn't really say I had that much alumni interaction, but I do. Now as the guy on the other side of it, I go out of my way to make sure that I'm connecting with the guys from Syracuse, from my high school, and just letting them know that I'm available, I'm reachable. If something has happened, I can't help them, or I could give them a leg up anyway, I will.
No, that's great. It's so important. I mean, I bring this up a lot where I was on a call with my alma mater and with the former like a Hall of Famer from the school, played 10 years in the NFL, and never they said they don't do a really good job of bringing the alumni back, and it's not on purpose. They just, whether it's the bandwidth or whatever else, and here's this guy with all this success in both school history as well as being an elite NFL guy. They don't bring him back, and I mean, he said, "Tap me in. I want to come back and help." But I think you brought up a good point too. I think when there's within the, I guess, like within the coaching ranks or the athletic director changes, obviously that probably plays into a role with that as well. So let's talk about one thing. I want to go back real quick to the networking, connecting, because this is something that's been coming up a lot lately. And you kind of touched on it, like football players hanging in with football players, maybe the basketball players. So do you see a movement? I think the athlete DNA, the skill set is similar across the board, regardless of the sport. I mean, obviously, your skill set within hand-eye coordination, whatever it might be. But do you see any movement more so of, like, let's say at the NFL level, of where NFL players starting to maybe interact with like Major League Baseball players and basketball players, but not just at the high level? Because I mean, you see like some of the star athletes from the sport. I mean, you'll see them at a basketball game together. But are you seeing any more interaction and kind of just utilizing that commonality that you all share?
Yeah, I just think the modern day athlete is a natural entrepreneur just because of the access that we have and the platforms that we all have that, obviously we get from the sports and the leagues that we play, but it ends up becoming our own. I think stars like LeBron James or Kevin Durant and even those other guys, Odell Beckham, some of these guys who are megastars who had great moments on the field, but are able to completely turn that and add that value off the field. And I think not only, like you said, superstars like LeBron hanging with Jeter, but I do think with of evolution and the growth of a lot of sports, I think it's you're starting to see a lot of guys coming to help the WNBA and want to interact with them as that league is growing and expanding. That's from an entrepreneurial standpoint too, or even like Indianapolis just got a professional volleyball league, stuff like that. Like trying to just be involved and learn, or even like as MLS and soccer continues to grow as an American sport, it's just, opportunity there. I definitely do see, guys being more inclined to try to, reach out and learn about it.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, I do like every month I do a networking event for my podcast guests, and basically it's kind of cool to see. Like, I'll have the NFL players like yourself. I'll have it could be Major League Baseball, it could be minor league, it could be swimmers, it could be snowboarders, it could be wrestlers, MMA fighters. But it's just kind of cool to see the group coming together and rolling up the sleeves and saying, let's work together. How can we help each other with our businesses? And it's just it's a kind of that alumni fraternity of not necessarily the school, but now the alumni fraternity of the athlete. So I don't know if you had a chance, probably not to listen or watch any of these episodes. So that, like, the questions, I got two fun questions for you. First one is, if you can go back in time, what advice would you give to freshmen in college there? 10 words or less.
Oh man, time management, brother. Time management, man. That's the if you master that, you'll master the whole trait. It's a million things to do in college. If you can figure out how to, you can figure out how to do it all. Just gotta manage your time. Just gotta manage your time.
I like that. I think I need to go back to my freshman self too and do a better
Sure,
job of time
sure,
management.
sure.
So now let's fast forward to senior Zaire. What advice would you give to him?
I would just say take your chance. Take those chances. Take those chances. My college career, I played as a true freshman, but I just felt like, you know, a lot of times, I guess I was just questioning whether I really thought if I belonged on the next level, or, how that would necessarily play out. And just looking back on it now, have been in the league and not only just learn from my own journey, but watching journeys of other guys who have been successful or haven't been. Just go take them risks, go bet on yourself. And that'll typically always work out.
Yeah, no, that's great. Want to talk a little bit about NIL, and I mean, it's you were pre NIL as far as when you played college ball, but really not that far removed from it. Just give me some quick thoughts on it. Positive, negative. Of what you're seeing today with everything that's going on.
NIL is good for the game. I think it was a crime when I was in college that Lamar Jackson couldn't benefit from his name and likeness. I thought it was a crime that Deshaun Watson couldn't benefit from his name and likeness. I know how people feel about him now. He was a great player in college, and those are the guys I played against. But I definitely think there's a little bit of a wild, wild west going on right now. Pretty much like everything else. I think it's going to get worse before it gets any better, and then eventually we'll figure this whole thing out. But it is teaching young men business. The business of the game from an earlier age. I think it's a little tougher for them. I tell people a lot, my head coach was fired after my sophomore year at Syracuse. And, for a brief moment, I thought about, maybe transferring to Clemson, who was, ready to compete for a national title. I knew I would have played there. But I decided not to, just because of the life that I had built with Syracuse. And I'm honestly an extremely loyal guy. Now, if you add 500,000 to that, I don't know how my decision would have been impacted. I'm from, North Philly, and at the time my family was on welfare at home. So that's a hard thing for me to turn down. And these are the type of decisions that young men are faced with. But then you also got to understand, you make that decision to go to a Clemson or Ohio State for whatever X amount of money. If you do not perform, or the team does not perform, there's a other side to that business. So whereas though before, you kind of, transfer, okay, maybe I got to sit out a year, or maybe, I got to learn through this, and I got to compete with the 5 stars, but also got to compete with the guys that are there. Every year is almost like a free agency. And like, while that is great, if you have a great year, it also can be devastating if something doesn't go the right way. And you got to learn how to hedge your risk, and, be able to move and be flexible in that world. So I don't envy these guys at all. I love that I went to school when I went to school. I would not want to be a part of that and have to make those type of decisions. But, like I said, I think it's going to get a little crazier before it gets better.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think that the biggest issue is just from the education component is just, athletes maybe not knowing, hey, guess what? You got to pay taxes and, set up an LLC. And you brought it up. I mean, it's a great entrepreneurial journey for people. I mean, you're building these relationships with your advertiser sponsors, and, it's teaching you what you're going to do next. And I think most people, it seems like the big NIL thing would be, they're looking at the portal, they're looking at like you said, the kind of like the big numbers. But I think there's a lot of advantages too to some of these other athletes that are getting opportunities. They might be smaller opportunities, but back to your point, it's a business 101 there of doing that. There's something. Transition out of sport, and so you haven't officially gotten there yet in a sense of overall from transition out of the NFL, but talk a little bit about going from college to playing in the NFL.
I just think, it's just a business. I don't know how these young kids are doing it nowadays with all the transfers, but for me, the biggest thing, like I said, is not having to go to class. I could be a professional at my sport, and constantly build my day around, getting better at football, not the other way around. So, it's definitely, a transition. Like I said, when money involved, that changes everything. So, but it was, something I was able to figure out and adjust to very quickly.
So now giving advice to athletes. So again, you're still playing, but give some advice related to just kind of preparing yourself because you've done a great job of that, and we'll talk more about that in a couple minutes here. But talk about that. Give some advice to athletes when the game is over for them.
I just think it's like everything else. You just got to always prepare for the end. And just have it in mind and understand that it's not going to last forever, and you got to use the game. Don't let the game use you.
Great, right to the point. I love it. It's awesome. Let's also so you've gone through that. Now talk a little bit about you had the entrepreneurial bug and you wanted to kind of get into. So talk a little bit about that and kind of what you're doing in that space.
Yeah, so I mean, just at this point, going into 8 years in the league is just, it's almost like an ecosystem that we kind of help create and build off the field. I think it all starts with my nonprofit, Shelice's Angels, named after my late mother. And we just do great work in the community in Philadelphia and in Indianapolis, both alike. I'm just giving opportunities to young women that they may not have been privy to or I had access to before, from taking them to Google, taking them to the Sixers, Meta. I think we're going to take a trip to NFL headquarters this summer. So, things like that, which is always beneficial. We have also had the opportunity to open a Readers franchise in Indianapolis. So bring a little bit of Philly to the Indy area, which has been great. And, just everything that comes with that, it's been awesome. So, they've been a great company to work with and partner with. And, just hopefully I could continue to grow and build, with them as I continue along my Indianapolis career.
So now do you have just the one location now, or you have multiple locations?
Yeah, so currently we have one location in McCordsville, just southeast of downtown Indianapolis. And, it's currently open. So go get you some water ice. I know it's a little cold, but it's going to get warm soon. And so it's going well.
Now my whole family's from Philadelphia. So
Really?
yeah, so is there going to be like a Philly cheesesteak franchise too?
Hopefully. My wife just bought me the Blackstone, so I'm gonna start learning how to make my own cheesesteak soon. So maybe.
There you go. That'd be good. I'm jealous now because I was talking to my son-in-law and when they were watching the Super Bowl, they did that. They broke out the Blackstone and made some Philly cheesesteaks. So yeah, that's good stuff. Talk a little more. So I mean, again, your passion project is Shelice's Angel. So talk. You talked a little bit about it, but maybe expand a little bit. Maybe how people can get involved. Some of the different things that are going on with that.
Yeah, so currently we have a scholarship gala that we're preparing and promoting for on March 20th in Philadelphia. So when I was 16, I was a junior in high school. Lost my parents. My mother passed in February, and my grandmother passed in April. Those were the two women who helped raise me, and my LaSalle community, the high school that I went to, really wrapped their arms around me and just helped continue to guide me on to college. And, now that I'm in the NFL and well established, I feel like it's just my time to give another young man that same opportunity and just help, move it forward, pay it forward like we talked about earlier. But not only just about that, also just highlight all the work that we've done. We do so much, like I said, not only in the Philadelphia area, but in the Indianapolis area, from financial literacy programs that we hosted at Lucas Oil and the facility to back to school drive just this past August. I helped take care of a few Amazon wish lists for teachers throughout the Indianapolis and Indiana area, which was great. Just glad to help the teachers out from Thanksgiving to Christmas. So we do a lot of things in Indianapolis as well. So if anybody would like to get involved and learn more, ShelicesAngels.org is where we at, and also Shelice's Angels on Instagram is pretty cool too.
Yeah, well, people definitely need to reach out. It's a great cause, and sorry for your losses. Let's talk, kind of finish up here because we're doing this podcast and we're talking offline. I mean, Zaire's like a podcast star here, so to talk a little about your podcast and some of the things you're doing that with your production company.
Yeah, so the Trenches is up my pod, and we did it this season. The last 2 seasons, so we had 2 seasons. I do with my teammate, who's a free agent now. Hopefully, he continues to be my teammate, EJ Speed, and my good friend Tim, and my homegirl Jada. But yeah, we get in trouble on the Trenches a little bit too. So, but we have fun with it. Honestly, that's a passion of mine. Syracuse is a huge communication school. I don't think people understand that. Half the people from from ESPN are from Syracuse. So it was actually always my dream to be on radio too. So that's just kind of all it is. It's just something that I could do, but we'll see about everything moving forward too.
What do you guys talk about on
Nonsense.
it?
Nonsense. So, yeah. If you're looking for nonsense, that's all.
There you go. There you go. So people, when trenches come back, you got to follow it for sure. And how can people find you?
Oh, so I'm on all the social media. Well, Twitter is Ziggy Smalls _ I got that from this kid in high school, so I got stuck with it. Then Instagram is Zaire 2 underscores.
Gotcha. Good deal. Yeah, you can find us at alumnidirect.com. Podcast is across our YouTube channel as well as across all the podcast networks. This is so important. I mean, Zaire gave just great advice and just we want to make an impact. We know it's a major issue with athletes transition as sport, and we hope, we always say we want to help at least one athlete, but hopefully a lot more than that. So we encourage people to reach out to it. Zaire, this has been great. I really enjoyed having you on the podcast today.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate you having me.
It's my pleasure.